Great interview.
I'm Mark Walters with BigFanboy.com. I'm sitting here with the great Henry Thomas, and it's great to have you in Dallas. This is not your first time to Dallas. You've been here for a few things before, but we're here to show E.T., and I mean, obviously that's very awesome. I'm sure you probably get tired talking about this movie, and so I'm going to try to make my questions somewhat interesting if I can, but I apologize in advance if I can't, put a spin on it that you haven't already heard at some point or another.
This press tour, the CT press tour, has been going on for so long.
Yeah. It's
the
never ending.
Press tour in history.
You're going to be like 60 years old, like, yeah, I remember E.T., kinda.
I don't remember. I can't remember anything.
Well, I will say this, the thing that, because I recently rewatched it, because it's one of those films that like once a year I always make a point to revisit it. And the thing that I take away from it now more than anything is so much of the sort of the stamp of the 1980s culture, things like the speak and spell and video games and whatnot, that was such a staple back then. And it kind of makes you realize, how much of that stuff, and I'm sure some of it could be chalked up to just merchandising, but so much of that stuff was such a part of our culture back then, whereas everything now is kind of going more online, like merchandising has become almost more of something that's on the internet as opposed to tangible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think all of that, all of that stuff that you just said, like all of the 80s, the iconic merchandise stuff, that was all Spielberg.
Yeah.
Because he's fascinated with technology and he's always been at the forefront of whatever technology is emerging.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 33 at the time, and he was just putting all of the pop culture references that he could in, like, listening to Elvis Costello and, Coca-Cola and, Coors and all the stuff. It was very, that's all Spielberg.
But I think in a way it automatically kind of made the film very relatable to people because everybody deals with that stuff on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was probably part of the machination behind all of that. But, part of what Steven was really good at was drawing the audience in to the kid's perspective. So all of those things played into bringing the audience in and bring him into this world on the level of the children and how they were experiencing it. And you'll notice that with camera angles and everything in the film, everything's like, downsized, so to speak. But it's interesting. It's interesting to look at it now and say, oh yeah, speak and spell.
Yeah, you spot the merchandise. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Atari was just so huge back then. I don't think people even realize like what a big deal that was to people. Because
video games in your house.
Oh yeah,
that's cool.
What's your first memory of just kind of that whole project? Like when you were first approached and meeting with Steven, like what do you remember about the early parts of it before the film actually got going?
Well, the auditioning process was pretty short. I had done a film in Texas, the first thing that I ever did, called Raggedy Man,
mm-hmm.
and we shot outside of San Marcos, and that was a Universal film. And Sissy Spacek and her husband Jack Fisk, they put it together. And their editing bay was right across from the hall from Spielberg's editing bay for Poltergeist. So they kept running into each other in the editing rooms. And Jack said, hey, I heard you were looking for a kid for your film. Put together a clip and showed it to Steven, and based on that, I got an audition. Universal being the cheapskates that they are, they decided that when they brought me out for looping, ADR, for additional dialogue recording for Raggedy Man, they would piggyback that on with the meeting with Spielberg. So 2 birds with 1 stone, very efficient. I did looping all morning, and then I went to meet Spielberg. and then you can watch the audition. And
Yeah. So it was really kind of a fateful, perfect mix of like everything in the right place at the right time.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. It wasn't just based on my merit. It was based on a lot of conversations that had happened outside of my knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the audition was kind of more of a formality than anything else. I think they just wanted to see if I could find the throttle. And when I could, it was like, okay, you got the job.
When you, and again, I realize that when I ask you these questions, it's like somebody asking me, do you remember what you did back when you were in grade school?
Right.
I'm fully aware of that, so I know that
that's
sometimes
okay.
those details might be hazy, but do you remember, like, when you guys started shooting the film, was at any point, was there kind of there had to be some sort of disconnect because you're basically playing off of, puppetry, and you're having to really invest in this thing that you're hoping is going to look good in the finished film, but, I'm sure there in the moment, there were probably some times when you're just kind of like, is this going to work?
Huge problems and technical problems all
Yeah.
the time. And, like for the longest time, there were problems with the eyelids. One would close and the other one would blink, and so it's like stay closed, and you're doing the scene and you're kind of, oh great, sorry, this machine, fix this machine, but it takes you out of it, of course.
Yeah.
But the idea, Spielberg was very clever the way he did it, because we started off shooting the stuff at school. So there were a lot of kids around. There was a lot of energy, and it was that was easing into it. And then we moved on to the stage, and then
Like, was the frog stuff, was that some of the very first stuff you shot? Wow.
that was some of the first stuff. The classroom stuff was all early on. Those first couple of weeks of shooting, and then we went on stage, and we did a bunch on stage, and then we went out to Northridge and did all of the neighborhood stuff, back to the stages. I don't even know how long it took us to make the film. I have no recollection.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was this huge process, and then when I did Legends of the Fall, the director of photography, John Toll, he was a camera operator on E.T., and Jim Plannett was the gaffer. He was gaffing on Legends of the Fall, and I said, yeah, that was such a long shoot, when we did E.T. They looked at me like I was from Mars and said, it's like 10 weeks or 11 weeks.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh man, it seemed like such a long time. When you're a kid, when summer seemed to last a year. That's what it felt like for me.
Well, and I'm sure some of those days were probably pretty long days.
Yeah. I mean, child labor laws and everything as they were, you could shoot 8 or 10 hours at most. But an 8-hour day for a 9-year-old kid is a long day.
There was a couple scenes in particular I wanted to ask about, and one was, obviously it's one of the most memorable moments in the movie where you are, in essence, drunk. How does Spielberg direct you to in being drunk as a kid? How does that work?
I don't, I was thinking about that, because I didn't really, obviously I hadn't been drunk yet.
Right. You didn't know how to experience it at all.
Well, actually, you've heard about Drew Barrymore's childhood. No, I think, he told me, you just kind of be goofy, and like you're just kind of free and happy, no cares in the world.
Yeah.
I said, okay. And so then you see my 10-year-old drunk acting.
It was very convincing, I gotta say. It was very, very well done. So, and then some of the other scenes, like the real emotional moments, particularly like when you're saying goodbye to E.T., and especially when he's laying in the bathroom. I mean, that scene still to this day gets me. I think maybe just the audio of it, it's just something that's really unnerving about it. But finding those emotional beats, like, again, as a kid, how do you put yourself in that place, and what would they do to kind of get you to that moment?
Well, Spielberg talked a lot throughout the whole process. Like he would talk me through a scene while we were filming it. So much so that when I first saw it, I thought, oh, his voice is still in there. They need to take his voice out.
Right.
Because I was still hearing him direct me. But, I think in terms of story, once the script is there, I knew what was happening, and I was already invested in the role. So those moments came towards the end of shooting, and I was really, I had it together by that point. And the emotional thing, it was just, actually I used a lot of losing my dog when I was a kid. I lost a little dog. It got attacked by some other dogs in the neighborhood and killed, and it really affected me. And so I basically milked that memory to death over the course of my young career. Like anytime I had to cry, that was my go-to thing. Until one day it doesn't work anymore, and you got to find something.
Got to find that new thing. Yeah.
And it's sense memory. I didn't know what it was called, but it was sense memory work.
Yeah, it's again very condensing. When you look back on it now, is it hard for you to watch it? A lot of actors say that it's hard to watch themselves in a movie. Is it hard for you to watch yourself, especially when you're like a young kid like that? It's kind of weird.
I don't really like.
It's like watching home movies from when you were a kid or something. Yeah.
I don't really like. I mean, it's interesting because now I can almost. It's been so long. I can almost disassociate myself entirely and watch it objectively. But eventually, like the pitch of my voice really bothers me.
Yeah.
I don't like to hear myself talk as a kid, and I'm sure the sound designer probably shares my emotions. It's like a very high register. But there's things about yourself that always bug you.
Yeah.
And sometimes those things can be exacerbated by watching a film like E.T.
Yeah. Well, I listen. It's still a hell of a movie, and if I could, just real briefly, I wanted to mention because like one of my favorite roles of yours is Suicide Kings. I love that movie. I think it's a great movie, and it's a really great example of how good ensemble casts can work together and deliver a phenomenal final product. What are some of your best memories from working on that film?
Well, that was a beast of a film to shoot. And
a lot of back and forth, time shifts and stuff.
Yeah, and it was just it's always like we barely have enough money, we barely have enough time, and it all came together in the end. But it was it was a lot of hours in a house in South Central Los Angeles, and my best memories, I think, are Christopher Walken memories, because he was a real character, and it was
one of his best roles too.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, like it turned out to be that way, But at the time, I remember, feeling like, sensing from him like he didn't even really want to be there. It's just like, I got to do this goofball movie, this little independent movie. But he was a real trip to work with.
Yeah. I'm good buddies with Sean Patrick Flannery. Do you have funny memories of that guy?
Well,
any dirt I can use on him?
Sean was always cool. He was always like he was almost too cool. Like, he was just kind of like there was a barrier between. He was set apart. He always had cool cars too. All these like he would show up like in a new like like a Mopar car one day, and then like a vintage like BMW 2002 he showed up in. We were like, wow, Sean's so cool. It just made everybody else feel like
he's probably just renting those from some place down the road or something. Yeah.
I think he must have gone on a young Indiana Jones buying spree.
You probably so. We got some nice residual checks in or something. Yeah.
It's like, get some cars.
I love seeing like the different types and diversification of roles that you have. I mean, everything from being like Gangs of New York or something like Red Velvet. Doing like these great. It's such a nice mix of like unexpected things. Is there a particular type of role that you really like to play, or is there something that maybe you haven't done yet that you would like to do at some point?
There's a lot of stuff I haven't done that I'd like to do, but it's funny because I think about this a lot. On the outside, when you look at the list of credits on IMDb or wherever, you go, oh wow, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. But the truth is that I don't really have any control over my career. Unfortunately, I would love to say that I sit in a room and go, not this script. Let's see, I'll give that one to DiCaprio. He can have that. I'm pretty much a working actor, hand-to-mouth kind of guy. So, I say no a little bit. I should probably say no a lot more, but I have a family I need to feed. So a lot of the stuff I do just kind of comes up as it comes up. And if it's interesting, I'll do it.
Well, and sometimes you just got to feed the beast. Like if you want to work, you want to like be able to get out there and act. And so if this thing is there and ready to go, let's do it. That type of thing. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because doing this for so long, like you start to weed out stuff based on like being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Like I'll look at something now. I would have never done this when I was in my 20s, but I'll look at something now and go, oh, too many nights.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I'll be working all night for 3 weeks. No thanks.
Yeah.
It's like the logistics come into play. Oh, this is great, but they can't pay me, and I've got to sit in a chair for 6 hours for prosthetics every day. No, I'm not going to do
no
that.
Thanks.
But the artist in you, or the artist in me, won't let me fail if I take something on. So I have to do my best, and whether I like it or not. And that's hard sometimes because you have to make hard decisions. But for the most part, I try to do things that are stories that I enjoy.
Yeah.
If I can find a good story in there or a character that is very, very interesting, even if the story falls short, if I can do that character very well, then I'll take it.
Yeah. Just to wrap this up, what's up next for you?
I got a film coming out in October. It's a horror film. It's the second installment of the Ouija series.
Yeah.
And it's set in 1965, and I'm playing a Catholic priest.
Oh, fantastic.
So I don't make it. But I'm very altruistic, and it was fun playing a priest.
Yeah. Very, very cool, man. Henry Thomas, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us, man. It's always good seeing you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I was going to ask you if you could take one on mine as well.
Yeah, let me take one. I want to put it on Instagram. You've been so accommodating. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. It's no problem.
All right. 1, 2, 3. I'm sure you hear a million stories about E.T. I had a first date. I wanted to go to E.T. and I'm bawling. When it starts to get sound, I'm bawling, and the guy's like, that was our only date.
Oh, no.
I love that film.
Can I get you to take one on mine?
Yes.
Okay.
That's funny.
I mean, do you find it hard now that you're part of the cultural fabric of the 80s? One more. Is that a tough? Well, why is it?
I don't really think about it too much.
You know?
No.
Do people recognize you? I mean, because when I look at you, I see.
People recognize me from E.T. a lot.
Yeah.
People recognize me from E.T. and Legends of the Fall. Those
Yeah.
are the big ones.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while you get somebody to, say something, and I go, "Oh, nice one. You saw that. Oh, that's good."
Now, do you have kids?
I do. Yeah.
And what do they think? Have they seen it?
Yeah, they've all seen it. Yeah. My son is scared of it.
Well,
Because
E.T.
he's
is
5.
kind of scary.
Yeah, he goes like this. He sits there and then he'll go. And then my daughter, my oldest daughter, she didn't really say anything. I don't know. She wasn't impressed. My middle daughter, she said, "Why are you hanging out with that alien?
Suspend your disbelief and watch the film.
Why do you like that guy so much?" That's what she said.
He was
And
a
then
symbol.
And then she ran out and she goes, "Oh, Dad, I saw it when that little guy, he made the bikes fly." I said, "Yeah, that's cool, huh?" She goes, "Yeah, that's great. How did they do that?" She went back in and watched it. So she was impressed with that aspect of it. But I thought it would be a big thing for them
To see their dad as
to
a
see
child,
their dad, and I
yeah.
could say like, I was going to do this big reveal of, you know who that guy is. But
Did they pick up immediately when they saw it? Like,
Well-
that's you, Daddy.
what I hadn't realized was one of their DVDs that they'd, it's like Toy Story or something, I don't know, whatever it was, it had at the head of it, some like 20th anniversary release, Blu-ray release or
okay.
something like this. It had a trailer of E.T.
Yeah.
So they had seen that trailer all the time, and they knew it. And I have books and stuff around the house, and I guess, I just didn't realize it, but they had all figured it all out before I realized it. And so when I said, they were like, "Yeah, we know who that is. That's you and your kid."
Old news at that point. Yeah.